Hey guys, welcome to today's Vehicle Visionary. Today we're going to take a look at the 2020 version of the Porsche Macan. And before you click off the video saying, oh man, I'd rather see a 2021, there is only one difference between the 2020 and the 2021. And while this is the turbo version that we're going to look at today, that's right, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to see how engaging the driving experience truly is. The difference between a 20 model and a 21 is that Apple CarPlay is standard for 2021. So we're not going to necessarily talk about all of the features and functionality, although we're going to look at some things and a couple of interesting little features that I found in the infotainment center and all that kind of stuff. The main thing is the performance. And I'll tell you what, it's not very often that a car maker goes from a 3.6 liter V6 down to a 2.9 liter V6 from one model year to the next and gains horsepower, but Porsche has managed to do just that. And we'll talk more about what's under the hood shortly. Now, in case some of you watching have never watched a car review video before, here's a quick little bit of information, just a knowledge nugget for you real quick. This is a crossover, and if you're saying to yourself, okay, I've heard the terminology crossover, what exactly is that? A crossover is a car sitting at SUV ride height. The advantages of that, as are the case with the Macan, is that a crossover has the ride quality and the handling characteristics of a car. Now, one thing I really like here, you have a lot of open vents here on the front with the grille, with the vents on the side, so there's plenty of air getting into that turbocharged 2.9 liter six-cylinder that I mentioned earlier that's under the hood that has what a lot of people refer to as a clamshell design. I do like the lines here. A lot of the time when you have a sloped front end like this, it really gives a vehicle a very racy and sporty appearance. And really, no matter what trim level a person may choose for the Macan, this overall design looks as sporty as it feels to drive. And I have done a 2017 Macan S, and even though it obviously didn't have the horsepower that this model has, it still handled great and was a lot of fun to drive overall. Of course, you're going to have that classic Porsche logo. My very first experience with a Porsche was back when I was a kid in the early 1980s, and if I remember correctly, I think it was a 924. I don't know that I have any pictures at all that I could show you. I thought it was the ultimate level of cool, even though my dad tells me that that car did not have enough horsepower to get out of its own way. That's the way it was back then. Now, overall, I must give kudos to Porsche for the design of the front end here and the unique way that the headlights just blend in. But one thing that's very interesting here, nice large headlights, great hood lines, overall great lines here on the front end. But a lot of the time, the way the hood is, it comes down to the top of the grille, like we have here. There's no shut line or anything above the grille line here, the line above the grille, I should say grille line. Boy, that's new terminology, and I'm sure I'll hear about that in the comments section. But I like the fact that this happens when you open the hood. When you raise the hood, of course, these nice large headlight housings are going to stay right here. But the interesting thing is you actually have a hole in the hood right there. Just kind of a unique look, basically, and it's so big that I can actually stick my head through it like that. I'm not big-headed at all, and boy, did I just open myself up in the comments with that comment. Be interesting to see. But hey, the more comments, the more views. So have at it, guys. Under the hood, the turbocharged 2.9 liter six-cylinder, 34 more horsepower than it was making in 2019 with a larger engine. So 434 horsepower, 405 pound-feet of torque. That's mated to a 7-speed PDK transmission, multiple driving modes, and I'll show you how you can select those right there on the steering wheel, much like the Mercedes-Benz models, the GLCs, and several other models, the AMG 63s and so forth. So it's very easy to just dial your way into whatever mode you want to drive in, including Sport Plus, which we will be driving in later on our test drive. It is an all-wheel drive model. And so obviously traction not going to be an issue. And I'll tell you right now, and I'll go ahead and show the steps on the screen. You can launch this model, and I haven't done it yet, so you're going to get to see my initial reaction. Here's what you do. You're going to need to be in Sport Plus mode. Turn traction control off. Then you're going to mat the brake, mat the gas. You'll get a message on the dashboard that lets you know you're ready to go, and I think you have 5 seconds before that basically stops the process and you have to redo everything to re-engage launch mode. And of course, when you're ready to go, you keep that gas brake or gas pedal on the floor. Boy, you're just mixing all kinds of things up there. Let go of the brake and off you go. A lot of people have varying reactions on YouTube to how this model launches. I don't know how I'm going to react to that. Now, being that I'm a former race car driver and I've driven a lot of very high horsepower vehicles, you can't necessarily take seriously my reaction. And of course, this is always where I like to share the safety features, or at least a partial list on the screen. Now, being that I didn't borrow this model from a dealership, I usually also say there's a full list via the link in the description of the video. No link this time because this is a friend's vehicle, so can't really do that, but I'll put as much information down in the description as I can so you can get everything you might want to know. Got power folding side view mirrors. They're folded in right now. When you lock the vehicle, that's going to happen automatically. And a lot of people, when I don't mention the fact that there is a turn signal indicator built into the side view mirrors, ask me about that. So there you go, you know. Roof rails up here, panoramic sunroof. So a very nice feature. I'll tell you what, everything here, top notch. And I like the fact that here on the rear of the vehicle, you've got that roof spoiler on the rear that has a little bit of kind of functionality, we'll say, built into it. You're going to notice kind of those, I don't know what you would actually call that. I want to call it a louver almost, but you just kind of got those air inlets right there that are in the middle of that roof spoiler, and that's not only going to give it a nice, again, racy look, it's also going to help improve airflow and drag. That means better gas mileage. But if it was me and I was driving this Macan every single day, I don't think my foot would be far enough away from the floorboard on the gas pedal to really get very good gas mileage. And while I did talk about the rear roof spoiler while I was standing on the side exterior, those lines of just the ultra racy Porsche look continue all the way from the roof spoiler all the way to the rear door right here. Just an ultra sleek look. Even the rear tail lights got that Porsche logo right here and Macan Turbo underneath. So if somebody doesn't know what they're really looking at with something like this and they pull up next to you at a light, well, they're not necessarily going to know what may happen if you decide to drop the hammer. And before I open the power rear door here is a quick exhaust clip for you. And of course, here is the power rear door. You have a removable cargo cover here if you wish to take advantage of that, or if you want to just take that out, you can. And classic Porsche, I think this is actually very cool. I'm sure, again, varying opinions. People always have varying opinions about, well, everything, right? But under the floor here, and as many of you have told me recently how you do not like the tire repair kits, that's not here. It is a spare tire on a red rim, which is pretty interesting. Obviously, with the rims on this particular model, that's really going to stand out. Maybe if somebody forgets they put the spare tire on, they're going to walk outside and say, why is that red rim on there and the rest of them aren't? Oh yeah, I got to go get that tire replaced. I don't know. Just one of those things that are very interesting, but I like how Porsche has done that. I just think that's kind of cool instead of having just that typical little donut that doesn't really look like anything fancy. That's just kind of something that stood out to me. And I'll put the cargo numbers and towing capabilities. Yes, there is a towing hitch receiver down here on this model, as you can see on the screen. And to maximize your cargo space, you have a couple of options. You have a 60-40 split rear seat, or if you want to just use that middle section as a pass-through, you have that option too. So maybe you want to go skiing in the mountains with your all-wheel drive Macan. Well, you have the potential to do that. You can put your skis in there, whatever you want. And of course, being that this is a power lift gate, you can close that with the button right there as we start to hop into the interior and take a look at the back seat. Okay guys, let's talk about the back seat, what your rear seat passengers will find here. Of course, you've got the dual air conditioning vents and dual USB ports, something you would definitely expect to see back here. And one thing that I find interesting, I know Porsche likes to set themselves apart, and as odd as this may seem, it's those little things that make a difference that sometimes we don't even notice. You have map pockets on the back of the seats, but these aren't just the typical plain looking map pockets. As you can see, you kind of have that ruffled edge on the top. I bet nobody in the car review community has ever even pointed that out. There you go, but it is there, and that did catch my eye when I first opened the rear doors to take a look at the interior back here. But as far as a great view from the panoramic sunroof for the rear seat passengers, definitely there. Great materials throughout. I'm very impressed with how well made everything is here. Not surprised, just impressed. And if for some reason your rear seat passengers want a little bit of extra privacy, let's see if I can get that in there. They're going to have to do a better job than I am of putting up that shade. There you go, though. Not hard to do. Just not something I do every single day, but you do have that on the driver and passenger side doors back here. Okay, the front seat of the Macan. And if you're a Porsche newbie, and you were to say hop into a friend's Porsche Macan and they gave you permission to drive it, and you said, where's the ignition? Well, it's not on the right hand side of a left side steer model, it's on the left hand side, and that is actually racing inspired, believe it or not. The 24 Hours of Le Mans, I believe, is where that idea came from. The engineers back in those days believed that, well, I'm not sure who actually came up with the idea originally, so I better correct myself on that, or one of the YouTube correction Nazis will take care of that for me in the comments section. But the ignition is over here on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So you hopped in as a race car driver, and as you were hopping in and getting ready to cinch down the harnesses and all that kind of stuff, you could start the vehicle as you were getting in. It was just believed that that was actually a quicker manner for doing so. So I'm going to start up the Macan, and I really like the exhaust note. We're going to hit that exhaust pedal one more time. Oh man, beautiful, beautiful exhaust crackles. And of course, you really have a classic Porsche dashboard here. It's not that it's low tech, but it still has kind of that classic look and feel of what you would expect. Got that Porsche logo here on the steering wheel mounted controls, and of course shifter paddles right here on the steering wheel. And I like the fact that they are pretty large. Some shifter paddles would probably be about half the size of what we have here. At least they have been on other vehicles I've reviewed in the past. And your typical steering wheel mounted controls here. One thing I really like is the fact that you can select your driving modes right here on the steering wheel. You don't have to do it here on the center console, although you know, there are vehicles that have that. I've seen some that have both. So depending on what you want to do, well, you can make your choice there. But I like that on the steering wheel with that little dial. Very simple to use, multiple driving modes, of course. And of course, you're going to have that classic little clock right here, the analog clock on the dashboard. And it really, the interior is meant to mimic that of other Porsche models, but everything is just nice and clean, easy to get to. You've got your touch screen here, the infotainment screen, all the controls for the air conditioning and all that good stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I thought was kind of funny here, of course, when you go down here to car and you select car, you've got several different options here as far as what you can look at and information that you can go through. But when you go down here to owner's manual and you touch that option on the screen, you're going to have several different options that come up here, a lot of good information. But one thing that I thought was very interesting is you have practical tips right here. And there's a couple of things that kind of stood out to me on the screen. There's air conditioning and there's refueling. And I kind of wondered to myself, a lot of the time the way car manufacturers do things is based on feedback they get from customers. And so I wonder how many people have said, I don't know how to operate the air conditioner or refuel my Porsche. I don't know if one of y'all are watching, you're gonna have to tell me down in the comments section. Now, if you like an interior full of buttons, and this isn't a bad thing. Personally, I think this is actually kind of cool, and that's probably, again, my racing background, because there's usually a lot of buttons and switches inside the race cars that you have to maintain and use to start the car and to shut it off and all that kind of stuff. So you do have quite a few buttons right here for a multitude of different features and functionality. And when you go into gear, you can bump the shifter over to the left like that and actually bump up and down through the gears if you wanted to do that. Yeah, everybody's got their preferences on that, so you can shift that way manually, or you can use the shifter paddles if you so desire. It just depends. And of course, a couple of cup holders there, and here is the center console. Of course, you got that, what I call the multitasker, the lid that kind of doubles as an armrest. And inside the console, well, I'm gonna guess about 3 to 5 Vehicle Visionary t-shirts properly folded would fit down inside there. Now, what about overall comfort? As far as just sitting here, the seats are not overly bolstered, but there's enough bolstering here if you wanted to go out and drive spiritedly, or maybe even track your Macan Turbo. Well, I think you'd be in pretty good shape as far as getting around the corners. Got the leather wrapped steering wheel that is nice and comfortable. But the main thing, of course, that I've been waiting to do is get out on the road, do a proper test drive, and see what the launch control experience is going to be like. And by the way, if you're wondering about camera views, of course you're going to have the typical rear view camera, but as you can see on the screen, there are a multitude of camera views available on the Macan Turbo, including that 360-degree overhead view. So seeing around your vehicle, definitely not going to be a problem. All right, here we go, launch control. Well, the initial takeoff was pretty impressive. You know, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, like I said earlier, you can't take my reaction too seriously because it's not gonna be everybody's reaction. The initial launch was pretty good. I was pretty impressed with that. I'm a former race car driver. I've driven cars with, as far as my test drive goes, the most I've ever done so far has been 755 horsepower, so I'm gonna turn traction control back on just for the heck of it. And we'll get up the road here a little bit and see how the rest of the test drive goes. So when it comes down to it, why would you buy a Macan, especially the Macan Turbo? Gonna be the most expensive model, obviously. Well, there's a lot of reasons why you might buy one. Number one, great handling. High-end materials here on the interior, very luxurious, pretty plush. And of course, it's gonna handle great. And even though I didn't change the camera position, and I hope that's okay, I'm just trying to save a little bit of time here because I need to get this back to the owner. But I must say, I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of high-speed cornering here and seeing how it handles. But let's just do a little downshifting here and see what happens. Gonna get down. One thing I must say, I've driven a lot of vehicles of multiple types over time of making videos here on the Vehicle Visionary YouTube channel, and I think that is the quickest responding paddle shifter I have ever used before. These really shift well, so let's just see how we do here. As you can see, I'm going into a corner at a pretty good rate of speed here. Wow, that is pretty impressive. I think that is the fastest I have ever taken that particular corner. If you watch me regularly, guys, you know what I'm talking about, even though you don't see it the same way here. I'm not gonna say how fast I was going. Got a reasonable amount of body roll, but for the speed that I was carrying right there, I'm gonna tell you what, I am beyond impressed with what this Macan just did. Kudos to Porsche. Not exactly a surprise, but I'll tell you what, for some of the other models that I've done, Mercedes and Land Rovers and things like that, that was impressive. Again, It goes back to what I talked about earlier with the fact that it's a crossover. So it's going to have those car-like handling capabilities. And even though it's not going to have that super low center of gravity like a Corvette or something along those lines, I'm still pretty darn impressed with what I've experienced so far. And here's another thing to think about here. I'm turning traction control back off because we're about to be at a stop sign. A lot of people talk about how rough these models ride. I haven't really experienced it as being too bad, but the reality of the situation is this. That is all dependent on what somebody drives every day. So someone else might say the total opposite because they're used to driving a Cadillac every day, maybe. I don't know. It just depends on what you're used to, really. So here we go. Uh-oh, you know what? Never mind. Did you hear that sound? That is the radar detector. Thank you. I have to say something, that is really unique. I haven't had that experience before, so we're just gonna take our time and drive on down the road, but I gotta get this back to the owner. So what are my overall impressions here? That ought to get some interesting comments down there. And I don't know if that was legitimate or not, but it was going off, so we're gonna take it nice and easy here. Well, I know the roads that I'm driving on here. A couple of the bridges on the road we just turned right off of are pretty rough. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even notice it, okay? And again, you're gonna get a lot of varying opinions from different people who test drive vehicles. One's gonna say it rides rough, one might say it doesn't. You're ultimately gonna have to just go out and drive it for yourself to find out for sure. In my personal opinion, not too bad of a driving experience. And you know, it's one of those things where I almost wish I had somebody to drive it and I could ride in the front seat if the owner had, or in the back seat I should say, and tell you what it's like back there for your rear seat passengers. If the owner had more time, we might be able to do that, but I know he's got things to do. So we're not gonna do that today, but I really have to say, I wish I had a little more time with this Macan, but my biggest takeaway here is the handling. Of course, all-wheel drive is gonna keep you firmly planted. It's gonna help out in a multitude of driving situations, whether you're driving spiritedly or not driving spiritedly. Maybe it's raining outside. You do have a wet mode here. So if you wanna drive in wet mode, well, that's gonna be helpful when it's raining outside and all that good stuff. And so obviously just multiple advantages to the Macan, but this turbo, I'll tell you what, I might have to ask if I can do a follow-up video just to drive it a second time. And that is a quick tour of the 2020 version of the Porsche Macan Turbo. Definitely had a lot of fun today. Very grateful to have been given not the keys, but the remote, because you don't really have a key with one of these models anymore, but given the remote to this model for the day so we can get out and have some fun. I really appreciate all of you for giving me the opportunity to give you a vision for your next vehicle, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.